Hello,
Hey,
good evening. How is everyone?
Hello.
Hello.
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. All right. Let's hop to it. So we ended Saturday with hooking up, showing data from our own database in React, and then the last exercise was to see if we can figure out how to add data to the database from our React app as well. So I want to show you guys that because it's pretty critical. So we're going to work on that, and then I think if we have, it might take up most of the time, but pull everything up real quick. 1 second. Oh yeah, I guess I actually want to show you guys showing stuff from it as well. So I want to make sure this is kind of a critical thing, like being able to read and show stuff from the database and then also add stuff to the database. So I wanted to make sure to just go over it. So that's the two things we're doing tonight. Okay. Get a terminal going here. I've started using the terminal in VS Code instead of my own. All the devs at work that are younger than me all use the terminal in VS Code, and I still like have my old ways. So I'm starting to adapt to the new ways. Okay, so we want to make a new, so I want to go through the whole exercise of like getting everything set up again, just because it's important to know how to do that. So we're going to, in day 5, make a new next step. So I need to CD to the correct location. It's a little bigger. So we need to CD to the correct location, which for me is module 5, and then day 5. And then within here, I want to make my next app. So what's the command I run now to make my next app?
MPX create next step.
And then I've been saying put @latest in there, but let's just see what happens if we don't, just for fun. And then I'll call this, I'll just call this in class. Oh, it didn't ask me any questions. So I think I think maybe @latest is pretty important potentially.
Uh-oh.
Now I know.
I didn't do @latest during our class, and it still prompted me for questions.
Oh, really? Huh.
That's weird.
Well, let's find out. So for me to delete this, I can do it from the terminal with this command. So that's gone. That command's remove recursively that folder. You got to be careful with that command though. If I was you, I would just like do it in VS Code, just like right click on that folder and click delete it. All right, so let's try that command again. Remember, you can always press up in the terminal to get to your previous commands. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's only asking me if I do @latest, so that's interesting. Maybe it knew my previous answers though, and it set it up correctly. So you don't have to like type that in again. I don't know. So no TypeScript, yes to ESLint, no to Tailwind. Yes to the source directory, no to the app router, and no to the import alias. Okay, so there was a few things that we needed to set up to connect to our database. Does anybody remember like any of the files that we had to set up to start using our database from the last class?
The environment, the env file
Yes.
with the key.
Very good. Yes. So we're going to copy this over. So the .env is just going to kind of go in the root of our project, the top level. And so that has our database connection. Man, this thing is still installing. What else besides the env?
You have your db.js file.
Yep, so we had made this server folder, not for any particular reason. That's just, you know, what I chose to call it. And then within there, we had our DB. So we can just copy this wholesale. This is one of those things that just is the same, you know, in every project where you would use MongoDB and Mongoose. So good, we got that. And then you can already kind of see the next one. So we'll just copy this one over. But who can kind of describe what this? Hold on a second. Mom sound. Okay. All right, so who can describe what this file does, or did you already do it while I was gone?
We're creating our schema.
Yeah, so that's one thing we do. That's what's happening here is we're saying, here's our schema for something. And then what is, besides this sort of complicated thing kind of here, what is this doing? Does anybody know what this is doing?
Is that when we update the database? Or is that pulling a result?
So what this is doing is, well, let me ask specifically, like, what do you think this is doing here? This third.
That's identifying what collection we want the schema to apply to.
Yes. Yeah, so we've got this schema that we defined. We said, hey, there's this thing. It's got a name and a bedrooms property. And so, you know, we're passing that in. We're then saying, hey, that thing is in the database in this collection. And then, so we've got like the database connection URL that we're passing in the environment. We're also passing the name of the database at the end of it. So like whenever we say Mongoose Connect, it's like, okay, I'm going to connect to this connection, this database you've already specified, but then there's a bunch of different collections within that database. And so here we're saying, here's the collection I want to use. It's called this. And by the way, if it doesn't already exist, it will create it for you, a collection with that name. And then here's the schema I want to use for it. And then this is just a name for what we want to refer to this thing in our code. And you'll see why we might need to reference it next class. But basically this is saying, hey, there's going to be a model that we're creating that's going to have data in it, and we're going to make new ones of it. and that should be called listing. And so basically we're just sort of hooking up this schema to the collection that we want in the database. So that's what's happening here. So we need to copy this over as well. And
On the double bars versus export default and then the double bars, does that mean or here or was that for?
yeah, that does mean or, yeah. So there's a few things happening here that are a little more advanced. In that, like, whenever you like deploy this stuff, it might this file may have ran at some point and like created this sort of like cache connection to the database. And so it doesn't, if this is already ran, then it's got this sort, you can see there's this mongoose.models.listing thing here, which is the same name as what's right here. And so this method is sort of like registering something that can be sort of cached. And so if it already exists, we just return that one instead of making a new one. It's like a very, very minor, like just performance thing. And it's not really, but yeah, that's basically saying, hey, if this hasn't been defined yet, then define it. Otherwise, just return the first one. So basically this or is actually, I don't think I've really talked about, well, we've seen this, like you've seen in React, like if you do like, if you want to conditionally render something on the page, you would do like, you know, some Boolean value check and then the thing you want to render, you know, like, so if this thing's false, then don't show that thing. So this is like the second hand side only happens conditionally. So like this is saying, you know, if this is defined, then just export that thing and only run this if this isn't defined, is what this is saying.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a funky thing because the way that or operator works is that the right hand side is only evaluated if the left hand side is false. Like, because like whenever you're doing any sort of Boolean kind of thing, like if I do true or false, like if the left side's true, it just simply returns true and then never cares about the right side. Like it just doesn't even evaluate it. So like I can also do like true or console.log hello, and like that console log will never happen because the left side's true, and an or statement, if the left side's true, it doesn't matter what's on the right side, it's true still. And so it's just sort of like a mechanism of the language is that anything that is on the right side of a or like that just never runs, and it just returns the thing on the left. So you can use it for like Boolean logic, but you can also use it to kind of conditionally run certain code.
So if you had the double and, would it do the console log in that case?
Yeah, because it always has to, in an and, if the, yeah, so the only time, so like true and console log, like it, yeah, so the left side is true, but for this whole thing to be true, it needs to know what the right side is as well. But you know, like false and true is still false, and so false and console.log doesn't run the console log because the left side is false. So that's what's, you know, it's what's happening in React. You'll have like some sort of statement like over 18 or something, and then some sort of like div with buy this, well, you can't buy beer at that age, but or buy cigarettes or something. And you would only ever see this div, sorry, this is super small. You'd only ever see this div if over 18 is true, right? So that's the mechanism you're relying on in order to get that conditional rendering in React. All right, slide aside. Let me. Sorry, I love asides like that. It gets me all nerded out. Okay. Where were we? Okay, so we've got our next project installed and everything, and we've got this model defined for our listings. And then if we want to be able to query the listings from the front end, then we need to set up our API. And we've got this hello.js that they just provide by default just to kind of get you going in the app. And we can just reuse this. I mean, you probably don't ever really want this route just hanging out. So you'd either delete it or reuse it for something. So we'll change this to listings because I want to make a route that will just give me back all the listings. And here we want to respond to the status of 200 with all of our listings. Okay. And for that, we need to use both our listing model. So this listing model that we defined is how we gain access to getting data from the database, adding data to the database, deleting data from the database, and updating data in the database for that specific collection and that specific model listing. So we need to import that. And then we also need to import the database. We need to connect to the database. So we will, we export this DB connect method that we can use to connect to Mongoose. So we'll do that first. We'll say await DB connect. And notice, VS Code kind of knows that I've got something called that and is helping me import it. And so like, if it's like predicting like that, you can just hit tab. So, what do I need to, so this is saying, hey, you're trying to await. What's the problem here that I need to do to fix that? So I'm trying to await, but it's like, hey, you can't do that.
Async.
Yeah. So export default async function. Await DB connect. We don't need to get anything from that. DB connect like modifies the global Mongoose thing that we're using. And so like we're just connected to the database now. And then we need to import our default export from this listing. So we'll do import listing from listing. And then if I want to have all the listings, sweet, ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever. So yeah, I kind of knew what I wanted just by the name of that variable. So we've got our model here, and our model provides all the different methods that we're going to need to be able to do things in the database. So there's find. Does anybody know any of the other methods that are on the model, or just one of them besides find?
Map? No.
Try again.
Um,
What's like some other things that we need to be able to do in the database besides
Sort.
sorry, I heard multiple things.
I said sort, maybe.
So you're thinking of like an array, right? But this is Mongoose, and it's giving us all these different like MongoDB like operations.
I said update earlier.
Yes, update. So update is one. I don't think it's specifically update, but it's like find and update, because you have to specify like what you want to update. So there's like find by ID, there's find by ID and update, there's find by ID and delete. So like all the different like CRUD operations that you need to be able to do are provided. So yeah, we can accept what Copilot's sort of saying here. But if we wanted to see all those other methods, we can do listing dot, and then we can see all the different methods on here. Actually, that's not right. Why isn't it giving me everything? Well, that's weird. I don't know why it's not telling me everything that's on here. Must not know what it is. Or maybe I did something wrong. We'll find out.
Is it because it was below where you just declared it listings with the lowercase L?
So, yeah, it's still doing it there. Okay, we'll find out in a second. It could just be I need to like restart or something like that. Yeah, it looks like I'm getting. Well, does anybody remember how we fixed this issue up here? This like import error that I'm getting.
Oh, some
ESLint.
like a name.
Yeah, so we go to this ESLint thing and then we need to change this. So I'm trying to, I mean, this is just something I was like, why am I getting this red error? And I just like Googled it and it was like, do this, you know, to fix it. So yeah, we just need to copy this. I'm not sure why that, it's kind of odd to me that that doesn't work out of the box, but okay. So that fixes some issues, and we can see maybe now if it's gonna be better. Huh. All right, well, let's just see if this is actually working. Okay, so this find method, assuming I'm doing it right, will it's like gonna find everything in the database. And there's like over 5,000 records in our database for listings. So we like that's too much data to return. You don't ever really want to return that much data from your API. There's always some sort of like limit or like some sort of pagination that you're typically going to want to do. So then there's this dot limit that we can sort of like chain these in certain cases. So then there's this dot limit that we can do to limit the results to 10. So here are our listings, and then we can simply just take this. This is going to be an array of all the different listings. We can just simply take that and return it as JSON, because like the way that it's stored in the database is as an object, and an object is a valid thing in JSON. And so like we don't have to do any sort of like mapping or translating or transforming the data in the database in order to give it to our application. We just simply sort of like pass it through. So that's like really, that's what's really nice about using MongoDB and then using Node and then using like JavaScript on the front end is like the way that you store information is like exactly the same throughout the whole stack. So that's what's really nice about it. So we'll just simply return listings. Okay, so I think we're maybe in good shape, and we can run this now. Does anybody remember the run command?
npm run dev.
Yep. Oh wait, am I not? Yeah, so I didn't CD into our project, so I need to do that, and then now I can do npm run dev. Okay. looks like it's maybe working, so we can open localhost 3000. And see that we're getting this. And then if I want to just test our route, I can do that. You know, I could use Postman if I wanted to, but since this is a GET request, I can just kind of do it really quickly from the browser if I want to. So I'll do localhost/API/listings. Oh, here's why it didn't know what was going on. So I mean, you can see the error here. So what was the step that I missed?
Installing Mongoose.
Yes, good. Yeah. So Mongoose is like a library, right? That we need to, doesn't come with Next. So we need to specify that that's something we want to install. And that's why my VS Code had no idea what I was dealing with. Like Copilot was sort of guessing, but I didn't get any of the actual like type completion because that thing wasn't installed. So npmi mongoose.
Do you ever use Postman in the browser? Or do you prefer the desktop app?
Actually, what I've been getting turned on to is like there's a thing called Thunder Client,
Oh,
which is like in VS Code sort of Postman kind of thing. So we can do it here. So you can just install this extension Thunder Client, and then so we can do HTTP localhost 3000/API/listings and see what this gives now. Okay, so yeah, we're in good shape. Like whenever I installed Mongoose, our server recompiled with that new dependency, and then now our route's working. You can see we're getting an object that has the listings key that then has the array of all the listings here. Now we close to this. We did not like, so in this request here, you can see like for our first record, we've got all the attributes. We could specify, well, so we have all the attributes, and also notice like we didn't specify all the attributes in our schema. That's just like, that is okay. So if we want to add stuff to the database, we really can only specify the properties that are here. But if we're getting things, then it's okay to have additional properties that we didn't specify in our schema. You can configure it to strip those out if you want to, but by default, they're going to be included. But we can, because this is a lot of data, we can limit the different attributes that are in this response in terms of what's coming back from the database if we want to. Does anybody remember how we would do that?
Add another object in your find method.
Yeah, so this is actually different than how we kind of did it the first time. There's like you can kind of use Mongoose a few different ways. You can kind of chain a few things if you want to, or you can like pass multiple parameters. So the first time we did it like this. And then the projection here would be name one, and then this is saying, hey, find everything. So it doesn't, you can, it's not a big deal to do the other style that I was doing, but kind of a preference thing. But yeah, here's how we did it before, and then we can kind of send this request again. And now, oh wait, I don't want to do a new request. Now we can see, okay, we just specified only return the name property, and so that's all we see. So we're sending a little bit less data now.
what does the
Okay.
one mean again?
Okay, so there's this funny thing. Well, in we're not specifying a sort, so we could. And so, for example, we could say, I think it's here, isn't it? I'll have to look that up. So we'll do. Okay, so in this case, we do need to use like a separate parameter here to do that. And so we can kind of see some examples here. Well, looks like they're passing it there.
2011.
Yeah, you have to kind of think about when these
Uh-huh.
things are answered. I mean, a lot of times you kind of want to go to the docs, so we can go to the Mongoose docs. And then go to find. I don't actually see. I mean, usually if you type in here and it's not showing up. Oh. Was I typing order before? I think I was typing before. Yeah, so sort is in here. And then you pass an object. And then you do like name either 1 or -1. So we could do -1. So there's a few things. So here in the projection, which is which fields do you want to include or exclude? 1 is sort of like include, and then -1 is like exclude. So it's sort of like a Boolean. It really like true or false would be more ideal, but I don't know.
In the docs homework, it does say that it takes in like 1 as the Boolean too. And so like it takes in 1 as a true Boolean. And I think either -1 or 0 was the false on the Boolean. So that's probably is why, because in the docs for the homework, I was reading that.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if you can pass true. I'm not sure. We can find out. And then so 1 is ascending and then -1 is descending in the sort case. But I think you can also, if you don't like that, you can do descending like this. So we can just see if this works. I'm not positive if it will or not, but so we can go back to this. And so we had Ribera and Horto, and now we should see something slightly, oh. Interesting, some Chinese characters.
I wonder if those are alphabetically descending. That would
Yeah.
be interesting.
I would think so. So now we can just, yeah, let's see what ascending looks like. So we get the empty first. So how do we get rid of this empty? Does anybody know how to do that? So we want to filter out any data that is empty string.
Name not equal to empty string, whatever the.
Yeah, I think we could do that. So you say name and then not equals is what do we do for that? Was it, I know there's equal, but is there an yeah, NEQ? Is that what that is? Yeah. And then that. All right, so let's see if that works. Nope.
I think it's any. Just not equal.
Oh, any. Cannot use any key with string.
Not equal to the specified value. Yeah, it should be any, and I think they're using string here. The docs.
Cool. It. All right, so that works. I also think you might, so now we're not getting any of those empty strings. Apparently, we've got like a escape character here so that they could put a quote. Because like the name is like by the bay, ideal holiday location. So like this backslash is getting sorted. So that's all stuff like your data is maybe not perfect for how you would want it in your app, so you have to figure out how to handle that and stuff like that. So I think you might be able to do, I think exists, I don't think exists would work in this case because the properties there is just an empty string, but I just want to check real quick. Hmm. Oh, it's the $sign. Okay, yeah, so it exists and it's an empty string, and so it's fine with that. So yeah, we have to do the filter for the empty string in this case. All right, so let me change that back. All right, cool. So let's roll with this. So this is giving us the first 10 results, sorted ascending, where the name's not empty. So that's pretty good start. So let's start doing some of our React stuff. So we'll go to, oh wow, we're like running low on time. Okay, I want to make sure you guys know how to create something. So I'm going to do the backend piece first, and then we can do the front end stuff later if we have time for it. So we've got this listings JS, which is giving us our listings. If we want to, well, actually, we probably want to call this listing. No, I think listing's fine, whatever. Okay, so if this get request is going to give us back all the listings, but if we want to create something, what type of request would we be doing?
Post.
Post, yeah. So we need to kind of, we can like reuse this same route. So if you get listings, then we'll get them. But if you post to listings, we'll make a new one for you, and you'll just have to provide the data that you want to make it. So we need to now inspect the request, right? So does anyone remember how to do sort of that if logic on the request to, yeah, what is it?
If
Dot method?
request dot,
Yeah, method.
Oh. Wait, ChatGPT had the, there we go. Okay, yep. So if request method, so that's just going to tell us get, post, put, delete, or all the other stuff as well, if it was one of those other requests. So if it is a get, then we want to be doing what we're currently doing. So that's good. Else, if the request, oh yeah. Okay. Else if the request dot method equals post, then we want to do this stuff. Now notice it's like connecting to the DB here and it's connecting to the DB here. We only need to do it once, and we can just do it at the very beginning of our document like that. Let me save so it moves that. So connect to the DB. If it's a GET request, query the DB. If the request is a post, then we want to do something different. So yeah, it's really, this is kind of correct, but it's really kind of jumping ahead, so there's actually a few ways in Mongoose you can create stuff. So you should have seen Mongoose. Let's just stay here. Okay, so in their quick start, if you had kind of read about this, you would see the way that they created something was they did this new and then the name of the model here. And then they passed the data that they wanted, and that would kind of make it, but then you have to call this save property to actually send it to the database. So typically if people are using Mongoose, I often see them do this sort of style. But there's another way you can do it, which is what Copilot did, which is you can call this create method on it and pass it the data that you want. So this way is valid as well, but I typically do the other style, but you may prefer this style. Just know that they both exist. So
So if the requests, if the body that they send is different than the schema, it'll just accept whatever's in the schema.
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's the reason we did the schema is so like when if we pass something in and the front end is not passing the correct format or something like that, it's going to prevent bad data from getting into our database. So since we defined the schema, it's only going to let us add the properties that we've specified. So we can kind of play with that and see that in a second. So we're going to call this new listing, and we will do new. So this is kind of I've mentioned this like funky kind of syntax that's related to classes that we really just don't need to learn, because you just don't see. You can program and totally avoid classes pretty much if you're in the TypeScript world, in the JavaScript world. But that's just kind of the mechanism that is being used here. So, but you essentially you type new space and then and then the name of your model that we have imported. So we want to make a new listing. And then we call that and pass it whatever data we want. So, that's an object, and our model only has name and bedrooms. And so we simply, if we're making a new one, and that's truly all the data that's there, we would do like name, test or whatever, and then bedrooms 5 or something like that. So you're simply passing it the object typically with the data that you want, and then the name of the properties being the name of the properties in the database. So that's kind of what you would pass. Now the request.body, when we do the post request, we're going to send an object with this data in it in this format. And so that's why it was just passing request.body directly into it, because that's going to be an object passed from our front end. So our front end is going to like make this request, this post request, and send it an object in the body for the data that it wants to add. And we're going to get that data from like a form. So we'll have like a form with 2 inputs, name, bedrooms, you'd type it in, you'd hit submit. We would then take those properties and put them in an object and then send that object to the backend. So that's what's going to be in request.body. So we simply just do request.body here to pass that object in. And then we'll call await new listing.save. So this is kind of this like temporarily staged sort of like created thing. And then to actually like put it in the database, to actually make the database call and save it in there, there's this save method. And that returns a promise because it's actually talking to the database and adding it to the database. So we need to await it. Okay. Now it is typically good to return, like, because when we add it, we are putting it in the database. And what does Mongo/Mongoose do for us automatically whenever we add it to the database?
Like data validation.
It does data validation, but as what I'm specifically getting at is it adds a property for us that's useful.
Gives
An
an
ID?
Oh, the ID.
Yeah, it adds an ID for us. So whenever you make something, it's typically good to like respond with that thing, basically which is going to be just the same data that they gave you, but you would include the ID in it, so they know what the ID is at that point. Because they may want to like use it to go to like a detail page or something, and they need to put that ID in the URL to like populate that detail page. So what we'll do is we'll actually return this new listing. So instead of, I don't even know where is this listing coming from? Anyways, so we want to return, we'll probably say like listing is new listing. Or we could actually, honestly, I would just return new listing in this case. So just return the thing that's now in the database with the ID. Okay. So we can test this out. Oh, and then, so we've got this check for the get, check for the post. We probably want, like, if they did some other method like delete and we don't have it yet, we probably just want some sort of thing like, yeah, like this. Great, thank you. So we're just saying, hey, if you're not doing get or post, like that method's not supported currently, basically. Because if we don't do this, then like our server could just hang potentially. Okay. It'll just hang and never respond. So that's not good.
So this is assuming that you have a form that you're using where just one entry is being created versus like somebody's trying to make an actual post request to your API or whatever to store that data.
Yeah, my assumption is we're writing this method because we're gonna then integrate with it and write a form to submit data to it. But like someone could use the API directly, and like that does happen in certain cases. Like you may be writing an application that's got an API and a front end, and the front end's using that API, but then other people are also using the API. Think of Twitter, like there's the API of Twitter that exposes all the data to the whole world. And then there's the front end of Twitter, which most people use, and that front end is using the API. But then a lot of people also directly use the Twitter API because they want to like read the data for their own use case for some reason. So the methods you write on your API may get used in different ways, and it's really just meant to expose a way to get or add data to the database. Okay, so let's check this out. So let's see, we've got our get request to listings. Oh, that's cool. It like moved it down here because I've got this other one. Ooh, okay. So that method still works. Like we modified that method, but it's still we're just double checking it's still working for our get request to give the listings. But now we want to use the post version of that route. So we'll do post, and then I don't know if this is as fancy as Postman, because like when I use Postman and I say I want to do like a JSON body, it adds the headers for me. And so I may need to manually do that to get this to work. But so we want to pass our JSON data for what we want to add to the database, which is at the moment pretty simple. It's name. So we can say, well, I wonder if we want to see this in our listings response. So I'll do like exclamation point because I guess that gets sorted first. And do that. And then
Well, doesn't it return just the object? Or do you mean like doing the GET request?
yeah, so when we do the doing the GET request, so we'll do this post request, it'll return the object to us and we'll see it. But then like if we're adding data with a post request, then it should show up in the GET request, right? At that point, because it's now in the database, it's going to be returned in that collection. So yeah, I do want to see that. So then the second param is bedrooms. And we can, well, that's a number. So we'd say 5. But we can see what happens if we pass it incorrectly in a minute. But yeah, so this is right. And then let's just see what happens real quick. Okay, so it didn't need a header. It just figured it out in this case. Just kind of knew that I just assumed it would be JSON, I guess. But we can see we got our 201 created status code, and then in our response we've got the name, the bedrooms, and then there's actually 2 properties that Mongoose / MongoDB added. One is the ID, and then the other, this is the version. The version is just like, this is the first time this was added to the database, and then if you update it, the version would be 1. And then if you updated it again, the version would be 2. So it's just like a counter of how many times it's been updated. Okay.
It doesn't store like modified timestamps or anything.
No, but Mongoose supports, you can like, they have this like built-in type where you just say, hey, this is the created at timestamp and this is the updated at timestamp. And it every time you call save on something, it'll update those for you. So it has like helpers. Mongoose has helpers for that. That's not a MongoDB thing. It's a Mongoose thing. So, okay, so 201 is the status we chose, and then we responded with new listing. We saw that work. It says it added it, but let's like double check and make sure that it did. So we'll go back to our GET request and we'll send that and we'll see what we get. Oh, I wonder if something broke.
When you send the body with a GET request, it freezes. I just had that happen on my end.
That's really odd. I wonder.
I think it was on that second link. The GitHub. They said, oh wait, you are using a GET request, that's the problem. Well, maybe not.
Where did you see that?
In the answer to that link, the GitHub link.
This one?
Yeah, right there. Yeah, it says there's an answer. Oh, you should use a post. I guess that's not it.
I'm like shocked that.
This was happening in Postman the other day as well.
Yeah. Well, so I wasn't getting any results whenever I was searching that for Next.js, so it might not be a Next.js thing. It might be like a Postman thing. Hmm. Well, I don't know, I'm very interested in figuring out what's going on there, but it seems like it might be like I don't know why our API wouldn't be able to handle that. It's actually okay to send a body and a GET request. So I'm not sure why this thing is hanging. But let me just, how do I do a new request?
There's actually a cancel button on that right pane. Oh, you got it.
Okay, I just want to keep this other one. All right, so we'll go back to here and okay, so this work. All right, so all right, so our test location is showing up there. I don't know why the ID is showing up here, but not for these other ones. Do they not have an ID? Wonder if when we imported. Oh, these aren't valid IDs. I think that's maybe why they're not showing up. So if I do sort by name, descending. Oh yeah, we're doing ascending. And then not equal to blank. All right, so there's our test location. Notice this ID in here is got this object ID wrapped around it. So this is a valid object. And notice it's like a lot longer than these other ones. So when we imported that data, like these IDs aren't valid. So I'm not sure why they put that in there, but if you edit these things, you'll see that it has the type on it over here. This should be type object ID, not string. So we change it to object ID. Now it's mad because it's not a valid object ID, but I think I can just it's not like that. I think I could probably just delete that property. Let me delete it. Actually, I'm not sure how to remove a property. Oh, this is actually a good idea. It may not let me unset the ID though, but we could do use Airbnb. Sorry, I know we're going over time. I'm getting like very distracted by silly things. We'll do db dot listing and reviews dot, let me paste that. Update unset ID. Let's see what that does. Okay, yeah, it's not gonna let me update that. But anyways, that's why they're not showing up in our query for anything but the one we just created, because they're not valid IDs, so they're getting stripped out. Okay, all right, sorry, we're out of time. We did not get nearly as much done as I thought we would. But yeah, that's how you create data. We still need to learn how to update data, we still need to learn how to delete data, and then we also still need to see getting it all hooked up to the front end. But so we'll cover all of that on Saturday. The homework for you all is to start reading about Populate. So there's this, it's very often that you've got data that relates in some way. So the classic example is like, you'll have like an author in the database, but then they've got a bunch of books that they've written, for example. And so like so in like SQL, you'll have like an author's table and then like a books table, and then the book will have like a reference to the author for like the author ID. In MongoDB, typically, if the data is not too big, we'll do like an author's collection and then just have a books property on the author that's an array of all their books. Like you can just like embed all the data that you want. But if that starts to, if the author is very prolific, which there's no way this would be the case, but like imagine some author has written like 1 million books. Well, then like you can't just keep shoving more and more data into an array on that property, because there's like a size limit actually. So and then also in some cases, it's just better to kind of keep the data separate in its own collection. And so Mongo and Mongoose do support the ability to kind of do relations and across a collection. And so that's what you'll be reading about, is what Mongoose provides, which is called Populate, which allows you to have like 2 separate collections that relate and that have data that relate in some way. Okay, sorry we went over time, but I will see you all on Saturday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you all.
Thank you.